Recipe Part 7 Norbert's Transformation. Before returning to the bedroom, John stopped at the bathroom and retrieved a large green first aid box out of the sink cupboard and a clean flannel. As he did, John could hear the faint sound of Norbert's strained whimpers from the bedroom. His neck was still bleeding slowly over his shoulder. After cleaning the wound with the wet flannel, he dabbed it dry with another one. From the first aid box, John took a bottle of iodine and applied the dark yellow liquid over the flannel and pressed it to his neck. It stung like hot acid. Next, he emptied a roll of gauze around his neck firmly. He knew it should have been washed and covered immediately after Norbert had beaten him. It was likely he'd get an infection from exposure to both Daggett and Norbert's blood. It was possible that Norb and Dag, having never lived like animals, didn't carry any parasites or infections. John could only hope. Satisfied with his dressing, John stowed the green box back in the cupboard and made his way down the hall to his bedroom. In a pool of his own vomit, Norbert lay in waiting. Through the blood on his face and his remaining eye, he saw John enter the room covered in Daggett's blood. Norbert turned onto his back, shutting his eyes and whimpered, "Daggett, I love you, little bro." "It's too bad he had to come looking for you here, Norbert," John said coldly, stepping closer.
"But why did you have to kill him? He wasn't a friend to you?"
Norbert slurred angrily. "I don't care about him. You're all that matters to me." John knew he'd done wrong and struggled with himself to remain convinced otherwise. Norbert looked so broken and defeated, but John insisted to himself that it was Norbert's own fault for enticing him. The more he fought conflicted, the more agitated he started to become. "It's not fair, Norbert! Why couldn't you just love me? Why did you have to be so fucking stubborn? Look where it's got you! You put me in this position."
"You're pathetic,"
Norbert spat painfully. It was agonizing for Norbert to talk. His cheek, nose and jawbones all suffered from various fractures. 3 of his ribs were also broken, making it hard to breathe, and his headache was only getting worse. Little did he know he was suffering from bleeding in the brain, subarachnoid hemorrhage, as a result of hitting his head on the doorframe, and was likely to suffer brain damage or even death if he didn't go to a hospital.
"Norbert, you have no idea what it's been like for me these past 3 years,"
John said tensely.
"I've never felt love for anything in my life. You came along and showed me what it means to truly love someone, but at the same time, it's like you took me prisoner. I couldn't break away from this obsessive love for you. I'm like a slave to you." "No one could love a freak like you. You're a monster,"
Norbert said, as he cringed, holding a paw to his chest with tears rolling down his blood-stained face. John was about to retort, but Norbert interrupted him.
"How did you think this was going to end, John?"
Norbert wheezed, coughing up more blood.
"I don't know,"
John said quietly. Norbert began to tremble, trying to fend off his tears of sadness and anger.
"John, untie me. I need a doctor. It hurts so badly," he asked quietly.
"No."
"What do you want from me, John?"
Norbert moaned in disbelief. John didn't know what to do. He turned away from Norbert and left the room, slamming the door behind him.
"What do you want from me?"
John walked down the hallway briskly to the front door and went outside. He stood on the top of the stairs and looked up at the sky in wonder.
What am I going to do with him? I've hurt him really bad. What have I done? God damn it!
John sat on the step and held his hands behind his head, breathing deeply.
It's the bloody mice all over again.
After 5 minutes, John got up and went back inside. He passed through the kitchen, selecting a large steak knife from the countertop rack, and went to the bedroom. John opened the door and approached Norbert, who looked at him warily, noticing the knife without reacting. John held the blade in front of him, staring at it sadly, and looked at Norbert. His face was so badly damaged. The blood in his fur had caked up in a sticky red mess. Norbert stared at him through a half-open eye, with a blank, hopeless expression. He knew he was about to die. John remembered the time in his past when he tortured a small mouse in his garage. He had inflicted such damage upon it, and yet it simply stopped trying to get away. It would lie there in a pool of its own blood, waiting for John to kill it. It haunted him. The look in their eyes that asked, why? John felt the same sickening feeling now as he did at the end of his last senseless kill. He began to feel truly sorry for Norbert for once, and aggrieved that he'd got this far without feeling it earlier. It was like having two different people in the driver's seat, swapping places randomly.
I'm sorry, Norbert.
John kneeled down and held the shining steel high above the ravaged Beaver's chest.
I love you so much, Norbert Beaver,
he said, staring at Norbert's bloody face.
Fuck you.
Without breaking eye contact, John brought the knife down on Norbert's chest, driving the blade directly between the broken ribs and into his heart. With a high-pitched "eek," Norbert's head jerked up and flopped down again as he experienced John's last dose of pain. Norbert felt his head begin to numb and his vision blurred. Breathing was impossible. It was like having a 200-pound weight on his chest. He tried to cough, but no air came out, just a thick glob of blood splattered across his front. As the pain and sense of his surroundings seemed to melt away, he looked at John's direction helplessly, and the fuzzy image of his murderer was swallowed by a sea of prickly white light. Norbert died at John's knees. John retracted the knife from Norbert's dead body and dropped it. Staring at the blood that oozed slowly from the wound, a feeling of immense sadness and loss swept over John as the irrational monster retreated into the depths of its psyche, leaving only a confused and overwhelmed man in its place, trembling and mournful. He leaned over Norbert and held him tightly. The full realization dawned on him that he had killed only living thing on earth that made him happy. And he began to cry, like he had never cried before. John lay motionless on the floor next to the dead, bloody body of his lover, staring at the ceiling. His watery eyes scanned the mass of yellow and purple images of the object of his uttermost desire as he held the deceased subject's hand.
All these years, my love for you has driven me, Norbert. I have loved you for so long, it seems.
It's not over. Not yet, he whispered, squeezing Norbert's hand. As John lay with Norbert, a wild idea struck him. So freakishly good, he wondered why he hadn't come to him sooner. A normal person would cringe at the thought, but John knew it was the only way he could retain Norbert for the rest of his life.
The ultimate Norbert Beaver plushie, made out of Norbert Beaver himself!
The sadness of killing Norbert erased with this new direction. John sat up and looked at Norbert, the excitement of what he was about to do to spark a second, even more disturbing idea.
I wonder what beaver meat tastes like. Norbert beaver meat.
Grabbing the steak knife, John picked Norbert up off of the floor and carried him outside to the front section, resting him on his back in the long grass under the shade of the trees. John braced himself for the job he was about to do. He only had a vague idea of how one should skin an animal and take cuts of meat. He'd seen it a few times on that reality show Man vs. Wild. It didn't look so hard. John took the knife and proceeded to cut Norbert from the base of his tail onto the neck. Putting his fingers between the skin at the tail and the thin membrane underneath, John separated the skin inch by inch from Norbert's body. He worked his way up to the ribs and soon reached the throat. Crouching to Norbert's side facing the separated folds of skin, John continued cutting and peeling underneath until he reached the spine. John felt it rather unnerving to be kneeling there, cutting away at his fixation of 3 years, and even though it was a horrible thing for him to be doing, it actually felt right somehow, like a labor of love. John proceeded with the cutting and peeling of Norbert's other side until his skin no longer clung to the membrane that kept his innards from spilling out over the floor. After cutting the skin around the neck, feet, and wrists, completing separation, John rolled Norbert gently and pulled the skin off his body as it turned like an inside-out coat, leaving the red and white carcass of a beaver lying in the grass. John stood up, flicking the skin fur side out. It was covered in blood and all sorts of other fluids that would need to be washed soon. Placing it on the ground, John returned to Norbert's carcass and set to cutting the skin from the head and face. John worked the blade's tip around Norbert's face and under his nose up to the tip, and peeled it away from the flesh with a forceful pull. It came up with a sticky sucking sound, revealing the damage John had done to the bones in Norbert's face. A thick layer of brownish blood remained on the inside of the skin from internal bleeding. John gulped with guilt. Lastly, John dug the blade under the scalp, the last patch of yellow hair left on the body. With a quick slice and pull, it came off. Norbert looked truly haunting, an unrecognizable mass of muscle and bone. His eyes bulged from their sockets, looking into space. John collected all the bloody sections of fur skin and carried them inside to the bathroom, dumping them in the tub, turning on the cold tap. John exited the lodge again, and after selecting a large spade from the tool shed, he began digging a shallow offal pit beside Norbert. Once adequately deep, John ditched the spade and picked up his knife to begin work on the carcass, cutting everything of no use out. All the guts, stomach, and other organs were tossed into the pit in a smelly, bloody mess. Norbert was considerably less than his usual self now. Almost half of him was missing, some in a hole, the rest in the bath, which by now would be full of water. With haste, John picked up the carcass and went inside and laid it on the long stainless steel bench before running to the bathroom. The bath was inches away from overflowing and John turned off the tap. The cold bath water had become a dark, brownish pink as Norbert's fur slowly released blood and dried vomit into the surrounding liquid. He decided to come back and scrub them later. There was meat to be attended to first.